Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Eddie Marcus once again, and I'm kind of glad to be able to bring this message to you this evening. Was about to go to bed. It's been a long day. I've been doing a lot of things, and when I went in the bedroom to go to bed, on the television they had Osteen on, and I just didn't want to hear Osteen, so I decided that rather than go in there, I'll come in here and make this presentation that I have for you. Today has been a busy day. It's one of those Sundays where you have to go and you either do something for God or you go someplace and you testify about what God has done for you. In most instances of today, you have people testifying about what God has done for them, how good and wonderful God is. And of that there is no doubt. I have to concur with most of the things that people say. But where the question comes along is how many people have the confession or of what they have done for God. So I want to take a moment and share with you some things, ladies and gentlemen, where I have come to. First of all, I am a social scientist. And I know many of you know what that is, and most of you don't. So if you hear that I say that I'm a social scientist, I know you got a cell phone. Why don't you Google it and see what a social scientist is, and you will have some idea of what my basic training is all about. But beyond that is that my life is just like any of your lives. We've all engaged ourselves and experienced different situations in life, and all of us who are still living came through them, and some of us are more at peace with ourselves than perhaps others. But we also recognize the fact that there are you and others that impact our lives. It has a reflection of who we have turned out to be. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I've been out here for at least 40 years, and I've heard some of everything, and I've believed a lot of it. But, you know, you say you will learn the truth, and that truth will set you free. So as I talk to you tonight, I'm not trying to train you. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I've made up my mind that I have recognized that people lie. It didn't begin with Donald Trump. He's just a sign that people have always been lying. And why he's lying so openly, I'm sure he has convinced himself that it's okay, based upon the lies that you, the people, have accepted. For instance, when I'm talking to you, I don't possibly have anybody that wants to hear me. I go to churches and I volunteer to go and speak to them and share some truth with them, and they totally ignore me. I'm at home and I want to share some information with my family about what is going on with me. They don't want to hear it. They'd rather hear Osteen, and I can understand that as well. This has to do with their background. It has to do with their training. And I'm not just talking about people here. I'm talking about people all over the earth. And I'm not trying to separate myself from that, because for a great part of that, I have been just like that. But I put myself in some situations doing what I have been led to believe without doubt that it is a direction from the Almighty God, till I am doing it still. So what the subject matter that I want to talk to you about tonight is this. God is dead. Now I know if there are those of you who are familiar that I talk about God a lot, you might still be listening, and the fact that I say that God is dead probably give you some cause to want to throw that thing down and run out of here. But I want to tell you why I say that. I have learned in my lifetime, just like you hear preachers all over the place that says things that you do not agree with based upon your own experience. They will tell you things that's in the book that contradicts other things that's in the book. And the ultimate force that they use to try to get you to accept it is believe. And that's a strange thing, ladies and gentlemen, because you can believe anything. You can believe that the sun is not going to shine tomorrow, and it does. You can believe it when your wife or your husband or your significant other tell you that they love you. You can believe that with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. Doesn't mean that they do. And if you're based upon at least half of the nation who have committed themselves into a relationship like that, they find out that it was all a lie, just lying. It seems as if people just lie to get what they want. And if it works, okay. If it doesn't work, then the truth comes and let you know that it was fake. So I would gather that the reason that Donald Trump lies a lot is because he knows that you will accept all kinds of lies. Now, what am I basically saying? I'm basically saying this, that from now on, having spent all this time trying to share with you about those things that bring you literal peace, that will bring you literal joy, and you, for one reason or another, cannot accept that, and perhaps I might have moved on some of those conversations based upon my own beliefs. But I have concluded, ladies and gentlemen, that that is not sufficient enough. Belief is one thing. Knowledge is enough. So the crisis that we engage ourselves and are confronted with every day does not stand on what we believe. I mean, it's created, the foundation is on what we believe, and we know that because if it were true, we would not be in the situation. So I'm not going to talk to you tonight about belief. I'm going to share with you what I know. Now, you ask me, is Jesus real? I don't know. I heard it. Is the Bible truth? Is what it talks about represent? Is it true? I don't know. I heard that it was put together by a bunch of men, and I know men, they lie. I understand that governments have been associated with it, and I know what governments do. They do things to promote themselves or their objectives or their goals, and if it's all about belief, you can be really messed up just like we are. Did Jesus go to the cross? Did he die for your sins? Did he rise from the dead? I don't know. Was he born of the Virgin Mary? I don't know. But what I do know is this, ladies and gentlemen. The world is really messed up. I do know that there's a God. And this is not about a belief. I tell you, there was a time I used to believe that there was a God because they caught me real early about, the indoctrination about the whole creation of story. So there was a time I believed in God, but it didn't really matter. I just existed along with a belief that was amongst a lot of beliefs, and it was good enough for my cause. But there were several times in my lifetime, ladies and gentlemen, where I found myself in a situation that required an activity. It required an action that could not come from people. There was no way it could come from people. And had it been dependent upon people, I would not be able here maybe 50 or 60 years later standing here talking to you. But because there was an expression of a power that I could not see, I could not touch, I could not feel, but I was a product of the evidence of that power. And it was a great power because it satisfied me indeed. Now, for that power, I call it God. Because even that what I heard about God was so powerful that it makes me think without a doubt that what happened required the power of one such as God. And so I credit it to God. But not only that, ladies and gentlemen, I allowed that mindset to examine me and set me up in a philosophy of life that I have been able to see and interpret that would be fine for all human beings on earth. Now, when I'm talking about that, I'm basically talking about, look at the earth. Look how it's put together, all of the wonderful things. I guess if you have been able to leave your neighborhood, if you've been able to leave your city, your town, maybe your state, you've ever done some traveling, you can recognize that there are a lot of miraculous things, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not just talking about the clouds and the moon and the sun and the stars and the rain and the earth and the trees and the grass and the flowers and the birds and the bees and all the waters. And I'm not just talking about that, but I'm talking about your body. The ability to have hair, the ability to have skin, the ability to be able to breathe, to have eyes to see, the ability to have a body to be able to use hands, limbs that would extend and allow you to do so many things, the ability to walk. Oh, my friends, when I think about this, magnificent. I can see that coming from God. Great stuff. coming from God. And when I see this, I recognize amongst us there are certain things that are necessary. You've heard me say this 1,000 times, and if I got to say it one more, I'm going to say it one more. There are certain things that are common amongst us for our survival. And it's called food, clothing, shelter, education, health care, and all of those other great discoveries and inventions and manifestations that meets our desires, meets our needs, meets our wants. All of that is like cream on the top. And when I look and recognize this, then I also recognize that the resources necessary to do all of these things have always been available, and they've never been depleted. They are still here. They are still a requirement necessary, and they are still being made manifest. And so I recognize also that in order for that to happen, the skills and the know-how comes out of you and I. We who benefit from these things play a participation in that process. And in order for that to happen, each of us should be, the best thing we could do is play a part in that process. And I call that a career. But it's not just a career, because I recognize also that we can have a career of our own choosing. And when we have a career of our own choosing, we can have joy in that participation. And we can give of ourselves more readily and leisurely. An abundance of resources can be made available that not only me, you, but every human being, not just in America, but everybody on the face of the earth can have all our needs met. And to me, that comes from God. Now, when I start seeing somebody saying that you as an individual can believe in God, ask God for something, and God is going to do something for you, and and you're satisfied, then that tells me that you are not on the right path. Because if something tells you that you can work this hand and make some muscles in it and make this a strong hand, I also know that if that other hand doesn't work, if it doesn't do what that other hand has done to get strong, this hand is going to be weak. And when you're trying to do something, it's easier to be able to have two strong hands than to have one strong hand and a weak hand. So I recognize that it is important that we do things together to be able to, don't lose a leg and try to walk. A crutch will help, but there's nothing like having two legs to walk. And God gave you those two legs. So the principle of being able to experience peace and prosperity and joy in your life requires a certain exercise of certain types of principles. And that is recognizing, my friends, that there is a God that you can't see. And don't put it on me. Don't put it on you. Don't put it on somebody else that's taught you to believe. Because if you do that, you're going to end up with lying and cheating and stealing and killing and wars and all of these kinds of things. And I also recognize, ladies and gentlemen, that in order for you to do the kinds of things that would bring you that peace, that would require you to have that type of justice, you're going to have to exercise something unique. You're going to have to be diligent in your activities. You're going to have to want. You're going to have to stretch out. You're going to have to go have an aim, an objective, and that is to see the peace and prosperity in your life. Because there's always going to be somebody there that's trying to distort you. There's always going to be someone there trying to rip you off and benefit from you without you receiving the benefit thereof. And I'm saying that because that is the system that we live in today. Now, this peace, my friend, this prosperity, my friend, when I speak these things to you, I am saying that this is God's plan. This is the Almighty God that you can't see. That is His plan. How can you go and pray and ask God for a house, and God grant you a house, and somebody else over here is praying and asking God for a house and just as diligent as you, but God didn't give him a house? And usually when you get a house, it's coming from somebody else and something that they have invested in, something for you that they are not willing to give to others. Now, to give you an example of what I'm talking about, I'm talking about like natives who were here. I guess history is appropriate there. At least the natives say they were here and they got wiped out. So that tells you somebody was working for the benefit of themselves and not the natives. I understand also that there were black people, and I just don't want to say this about natives and black people because I'm sure in the experience of life, all shades of people, all ethnicities have experienced these same things, and they have had the same type of repercussions, and that's perhaps the reason why they are all caught up not trusting anybody. But that's something I don't really know as a fact. All I know, ladies and gentlemen, is a fact that if you want to have your desires met, if you want to experience what we call heaven on earth, which means peace and freedom and prosperity and joy of life and the fulfillment of your dreams, you're going to have to put God center. And by putting God center, we have to work together. We have to work together. We have to work together. And if somebody prays to God and God gives them a house, we're not going to worry about the next person praying to God to get a house. We're going to put our ambitions, we're going to put our strength, we're going to put our understanding together and work for that because of the process that have been given that would produce that. So I'm saying to all Americans, when you hear these politicians talking about what they want to do for you, they might be serious, but they're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to do it because they're not connected to the right principle. They might have a good idea. They say education for everybody, health care for everybody, and that is a wonderful thing. That's what I'm talking to you about. But I'm trying to tell you that if I was trying to tell you I was going to produce health care, that I was going to go and talk to a bunch of people in politics who got a different bunch of goals and objectives, and I'm going to be able to connive at them in such a way that they can agree with me and make sure that you have these things, I'm not going to tell you that lie. First of all, because in order to do these kinds of things, you're going to have to change the system that you live in. But yes, you're going to have to change the kind of system that you live in. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that in order to do those things that would bring you that complete heaven on earth, you have to have your faith, and I do say faith, in something that you can't see, something that you can't touch, something that you feel, but you got it inside your heart, got it inside your spirit that you want it to happen, and you're going to have enough faith that you're going to exercise yourselves, and in so doing, your hope will become alive. So I'm not telling you something's lying, because there's another those that want to deceive you, and you're not going to hear that from most people. That is the trick that keeps so many of us from having the benefits of our lives. And rather than trusting and having faith in God and that God will want all things for us, we believe in something that's been put before us called money. And we think that with money we can acquire everything. And for some strange reason, money is used to do those things. But because money is not as adequate as God is, we have that distinction, we have that divide that brings a house down because it's not together. And so you got people controlling and manipulating people by the uses of money. That's why you got a football player who's signed a 6-year contract for $100 million. And you go to work at your job and you got to fight for $15 an hour. What kind of sense does that make? Well, that's the kind of sense of people living because they believe in what somebody else can do. So what I'm saying is that these politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, whether they're men or women, whether they're black or white, they're not going to be able to meet the needs that you have. There's no way they're going to be able to do it, because in order for that to happen, it must come from God. And the only way God is going to give it to you is if you're deserving. If you can, you're going to reap what you sow. So if you're sowing the right outreach, if you're sowing the right desire, what do I mean by right? I mean all of you are common amongst your efforts to acquire certain things. Then you can't lose. There's no way you can lose, because now it is you, the people, being led by that unseen spirit together for a common cause. And then you got a house, you got a house, you got a house, you got a house, you got transportation, you got transportation. You got schooling, you got schooling, you got schooling, you got health care, you got health care, you got travel, you got everything that you can imagine that you want, and those things that you haven't received yet, you're not worried about them because you know you can. You're not worried about going to heaven because you're experiencing heaven right now. And the same power, the author of the heaven you were talking about going to, is being used through you to create that same heaven right here on earth. Now, I am speaking to you about everybody. I'm not talking to you about some people. I'm not talking to you about black people alone. I'm not talking to you about Americans alone. When you have the attitude to make America great again, basically what that means is everybody else be damned. Whatever it takes to make America great, that's what they're going to implement. If it means taking land so whoever is considered an American can benefit, or use the slave labor can benefit, if it's just an aristocracy trying to exercise a continuation of that process, then that's what's going to happen. But, my friends, that will not satisfy the needs of all the people. So rather, somebody say, well, why don't you want to listen to Osteen? He got millions of people listening to him. He has millions of dollars that people give him for what he says. And I guarantee you, whatever he's saying will not produce for you what is producing for some of the people that he has there listening to him. And only some of the people that are listening to him get any results from that. But you see, everybody seems to be smiling because they are part of the collective. They are part of this positive speech. And so they are glad about that. The fact that they are not benefiting from it, they say, well, it's coming. Well, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when Osteen has amount of money coming in, that's that same source, that anti-God that uses to keep your mind off the God that will satisfy all of you, that should tell you something. But I'm not trying to tell you to change your beliefs about anything. My mission here is to say to you about your heaven on earth. And when I say your, I'm talking about all Americans. And I'm not talking about ripping off the Africans. I'm not talking about ripping off the people in Central America. I'm not talking about ripping off anybody. I'm talking about being free to be you and to do that which only you can do to the degree that you can do it. And doing it in peace and receiving from it the desires that you have, the aspirations is all there, ladies and gentlemen. So that might sound like something that you want to hear, but for the most part it is not. And it is not because you haven't heard this. People talk to you like this before. You haven't heard it. You've heard everything but this. But this. And it makes me sick to my stinking nerves. And it does. When I come in here and I say this stuff to you, and if somebody in my own household cringe because their beliefs are so diabolically against this, they don't want to hear it. And then they want to sit there and listen to Osteen and other people like they got something to say. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. I'm not going to tell you it didn't hurt. But I understand why it happens. But it's not going to get me to come up with trying to do something like Osteen. I remember Oprah Winfrey years ago. I wanted to see if I can get her to allow me to come on the show so she can query me. And maybe I can answer some things to you people who might have some questions. She was pissed for one reason or another. She wouldn't allow me to do that. I've gone to radio stations who think I want to redistribute wealth and will not allow me to have any kind of participation. I've had people in newspapers to print certain things, and then when they see that I'm talking about everybody, they say I'm talking about hate. Well, yes, if you're trying to say that I see that you have been ripped off through a system that is causing you suffering, yeah, I want you to know that. And if people say, well, I got this because I gave of myself, I work for myself, and you're trying to take it, I'm trying to tell them where that philosophy of life come from and even show how it hinders them and show them the benefit of changing perhaps their minds, changing perhaps their concept about what life is all about. That's all I'm trying to do. I can't make it, can't force you. But after living in this earth as long as I have, look at the gray hair, look at the bald spot back there. I've been living a long time, and there's nothing being said out there that's new, that hasn't already been said. And the results have already been given, and you see it. You see it. Trump is the president. One Christian group is supporting him, another Christian group isn't. And they want to fight against Russia, or don't want to fight against Russia. They want to fight against Iran, or don't want to fight against Iran. All of these things, and you just sitting in the middle wondering who you should pay some attention to when none of them got anything to offer you. What I'm saying to you is that it comes from God, but it is emphasized through you. Through you. If they're not telling you that you are going to have to be the one that exercise the gifts of God and do it in a collective, unified way, if they're not telling you that, they're tricking you. They're tricking you, and you can tell that they're tricking you because they got mansions. They got limousine service. They are on tapes. They are making all kinds of these money. They're doing all kinds of things, and you are just still going back every Sunday, getting a little bit of the little money that you might have. You might have big money. I'm not trying to say big people don't do this. But I know one thing, most big people are not concerned about that. They know the game that's being played. It is the people who have been held down in bondage, who have been indoctrinated, who have been programmed to follow the suit. They're the ones that's being had. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk to you. And when I say that God is dead, I don't mean that the literal God that I keep telling you about all his love, is dead. That's not what I mean. What I mean is this. For those of you who go to church, even those millions that listen to Osteen, they will stand before you and give you a great testimony about how wonderful God has been to them. They will tell you about how he's given them their health, how he's brought them back from cancer, how they have been dead and left their bodies, and they were standing out looking at their bodies, and then they were given the opportunity to re-emerge into their bodies and live on. They'll tell you about how wonderful God is. And God is all of that. I'm not trying to take any of that from God. Here is when God is dead. God is dead when it comes to these people, when it comes to you, the people, receiving that understanding, receiving that faith, receiving that gift from God, and yet not understand the role that is required for you to play in doing additional work in the name of God. And for you to have that peace and that prosperity and that joy of life and the freedom and the fulfillment of your dreams is going to require that you do the work in the name of God for one another. And that's how you're going to get. You don't hear that, do you? Have you heard that before? Have you heard that before? I wonder if my family down in Mississippi, I wonder if they've heard that before. My family in Chicago, I wonder if they have heard that before. And if they did, what are they doing about it? Are they making some changes in their lives? Are they asking God for a different message, a different point of view that they can express something? Or are they still walking in the same tracks that they've been walking in all the time? Because they have learned that the money is what they put their trust in. They're not putting their trust in God, except its ability to help them get the money. Because if they take the money away, what would happen? I just want to move over here for a second. Let's take all the money out. What's going to happen? You know, people who believe in money are going to say, well, nothing's going to get done. Because money serves as an incentive to get people to work. That's what they're going to tell you. That's what they're going to tell you. Let me ask you something. You put one family in a place where nobody else is there but them. Are they going to do those things necessary for survival? Are they going to sit down on a stump and say, I'm not doing nothing because ain't no money? I got to believe. Now, this I believe. I ain't going to believe this. I know this. They're going to get off that stump and do something. They're going to do what it takes to get something to eat. They're going to do what it takes to get some shelter. They're going to do what it takes to have some clothing. They're going to do what it's necessary to have some education based upon what they've learned from their experiences. And they're going to do something about health care. They're going to do something. That's just one family. Nobody to depend on but themselves and what's available to them. Now, you just take that and measure that with all of the people. Now, when that one person had to do all of these different things, you don't have to do but a part of one thing because everybody else has done another part of something else. And it just magnifies itself. Golly. Now that's the magnificent God that I'm talking to you about, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not talking to you about something I believe. I'm telling you something I know. And I don't have to talk about Paul, John, Matthew, Abraham. I don't have to talk about anybody but us and God. Us and God. I don't have to talk about the history. All I have to talk about now is us and God. Now in us and God. And I guarantee you beyond a shadow of doubt, just like the sun rises, it will go down. Just like the night appears in time, the day is going to appear. And between those night and day, there's something else that's taking place. And so from the point of view not having nothing to having your dreams met, it's going to require something else taking place. And it has nothing to do with lying and cheating and stealing and trying to consider yourself superior to someone else. I'm going to leave it there because I'm always saying these things to you. But